I'm the managing partner of a firm called Pataro and Fumo. And what it means to be the managing partner is I not only sign the back of the check, but I sign the front of the check as well. I'm the guy responsible for payroll, for taxes, health insurance. And I'm happy to report that since this COVID has hit our firm, we haven't furloughed one employee. Everybody has still been employed, and we still pay our employees, their families' insurance, as well as their insurance. So something I'm very proud of as the managing partner here at the firm. I've practiced every kind of law. I practice family law. I practice civil law. I practice business litigation, and my area of expertise is criminal defense work. I teach trial advocacy at the law school. I teach opening statements and closing arguments, and I teach pretrial criminal litigation. In addition to that, I've served as an assemblyman for at the Nevada State Legislature for the last 2 sessions. I think I'm uniquely qualified for this position because I practice every single kind of law that you will see at the Supreme Court. In addition to serving at the legislature, I've also been a hearing master for Police Fatality Fact-Finding Review Board. In 2013, I was appointed to that position by the Clark County Commission. In 2015, I was appointed by Las Vegas Justice Court to adjudicate misdemeanor offenses, and I left that position in 2016 when I ran for the legislature. I've received every endorsement that I've sought from labor, from ICAN. I've received the endorsement from the Clark County Court Marshals, who are in the courts with the judges every day, and they chose me over my 2 opponents. SEIU is another one I'm very proud of. It's not just the nurses in Nevada, but it's the district attorney's personnel, it's the public defender personnel, it's the court personnel in the courtroom with the judges, and they endorsed me over my opponents. You can look at my record. You can look at my website, ozzyfumo.com. I appreciate this opportunity, and I hope I can earn your viewers' support as well.
Thank you. Judge Richard Scotti, we'll unmute you.
All right, I'm unmuted now. Great. So I'm Judge Richard Scotti in Department 2. I'm running for re-election. I handle criminal and civil matters. I would also like to say thank you to ICAN and Segal and Milan. Thank you for hosting this town hall and for inviting me to participate, and for the ICAN endorsement as well. For 30 years, I have lived and practiced law here in Clark County. I've raised my children here. We've enjoyed living in Clark County, and now I'd like an opportunity to give back again to the community. It's my greatest honor to have served as the district court judge, and I hope to have an opportunity to do that again. My peers have given me the preeminent rating. That's the highest rating possible in legal ability and ethics. The American Bar Foundation has also recognized me as being in the top 1% of legal professionals. I've received endorsements from the major veterans organizations in town, as well as nearly 100 law enforcement agencies in Nevada. I'm honored to have been selected by the chief judge to handle all criminal misdemeanor appeals and all eviction appeals here in Clark County. I was also designated to serve as the administrator for the settlement conference program to help resolve cases here in Clark County. Further, I was elected twice to 2 terms by my peers, by all the lawyers in town, to serve on the State Board of Governors. My goal as a judge is to make sure that everybody who comes into court is treated fairly, that they have a full and fair opportunity to be heard, that due process is scrupulously followed. And when they leave, when they walk out of my courtroom, even if they might lose, I want them to feel that justice has been served. So thank you, and I hope I have a chance to serve once again.
Thank you. Next up is Judge Joe Hardy Jr. We'll wait to get you unmuted first.
Thank you, Milan, and thank you, Segal and Dylan and ICAN for putting this on. My name is Joe Hardy Jr. I'm a 3rd-generation Nevadan, grew up in Boulder City, a proud product of Clark County School District, raising a family here now with two teenage boys who are now in the school district as well. I've been the judge in Department 15 for 5 years now. I am up now for re-election. I am on the primary ballot, so I hope to earn the voters' support again. I was retained in 2016. I handle a civil and criminal docket in Clark County. Here we have a massive caseload, and part of my resolve as a judge is to handle that caseload fairly and efficiently, and I feel I've done that for the last 5 years. When I was growing up, I had no desire to enter into law, but here I am. But one thing my parents taught me as a kid was to give back to the community that's given so much to our family, and I'm honored to do that as the judge in Department 15. To learn more about me and my qualifications, people can visit my website, which is judgejoehardy.com, and thank you all again.
Thank you. And the next up is Judge Eric Johnson. Let's wait for you to be unmuted.
Hi, I am Judge Eric Johnson, Department 20 with the 8th Judicial District Court. I appreciate ICAN holding this event tonight and giving us all an opportunity to speak to its members. Before my appointment to the bench in 2015 by Governor Sandoval, I served Nevada as a prosecutor for almost 32 years. I came out here in 1984 as part of the organized crime program at the Department of Justice. And consequently, I've handled numerous trials and cases involving murder, public corruption, terrorism, money laundering, and a broad spectrum of other matters. I've been twice honored by the Department of Justice as one of the nation's top prosecutors. And before coming onto the bench, I regularly taught trial advocacy at the National Advocacy Institute. Since coming onto the bench, I have handled numerous criminal and civil jury trials. I was one of the original judges asked to participate on the homicide panel, which was created to handle all of the murder cases in the 8th Judicial District Court. Consequently, I have a deep understanding of what litigants, witnesses, jurors experience in a trial and how important a judge is in ensuring litigation is forwarded in an expeditious manner and in a fair manner. Good judges are essential for justice to be served in this process. And I like to emphasize my trial experience because the district court here in Clark County is our trial court. I would appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve and bring my experience and I think my unique perspective to the bench and to the litigants that appear in the court. Thank you.
Perfect. Now we'll have Mr. Jacob Reynolds. Wait for you to be unmuted. Great.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to ICAN for hosting this and for endorsing me in this race. The certain endorsements have a little more meaning. I am extremely grateful for this endorsement. When I was 12, my family moved to Israel so my dad could be a professor at Hebrew University, and he was a scholar in residence there. I turned 13 there and was able to go to the Western Wall and Wailing Wall and enjoy a great experience there growing up. So this endorsement is very special to me and I'm grateful for it. Thank you, Milan and Dylan, for your support, and Seagull. I am running in Department 21. It's also a district court seat, the trial court. When I graduated from law school, I went to J. Reuben Clark Law School. I did well enough that I was able to have a federal court clerkship. I clerked for the Chief Judge, Roger L. Hunt, at that time, and was able, after that, to go work at Hutchison and Steffen. I am also AV rated. This is an open seat. I forgot to mention, there is no current judge in this seat. I am the highest rated attorney in this race. AV rated, as some others on this panel have already mentioned the importance of that rating. My primary practice is commercial litigation, complex commercial litigation. I have done a lot with pro bono work. I host an event once every year, every other year, to promote about 100 to 200 attorneys taking pro bono cases and supporting that effort. So I've represented people, cases worth millions of dollars and cases where the litigant's just looking for $1,000 or something like that. And it's been important to me in my practice to have that well-rounded application. I wanted to say that I am running because I love the law. I think it's important to have good judges, intelligent judges on the bench that are willing and ready to serve. I met my wife here in Las Vegas. We have 4 children. She is a practicing OBGYN here in Nevada, and she loves her practice, and she's willing to support me in this race, and my family has been a great support, and we're excited to be public servants if the people elect us. So thank you for this endorsement and for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Judge Susan Johnson. Wait for you to be unmuted. Great. You're unmuted, Judge Johnson.
Okay, great. Thank you. I also want to thank ICAN for its endorsement and Milan and Segal for hosting this event for all of us. My name is Susan Johnson. I'm the district court judge here in department number 22. I am a Nevada resident for 56 years. I'm not a newbie like Mr. Fumo is. I have been your district court judge for 13 years, and I hear primarily civil, criminal, and constructional defect cases. Before I became elected to the bench in 2006, I was an attorney, an AV rated attorney, which is the highest rating one can receive from Martindale-Hubbell, and I was an attorney for 21 years. I practiced pretty much every gambit of civil practice, from representing police officers in civil rights cases to representing victims in personal injury actions. I started doing a practice which became quasi-judicial by accident. I was appointed to be an arbitrator by the 8th Judicial District Court, and I ended up arbitrating and deciding over 600 arbitrations. I was also appointed as a mediator, as a settlement judge for the Supreme Court, judge pro tem for Justice Court, alternate hearing master for child support cases, and on and on. And the reason I want to be elected is because I certainly enjoy my job. I decided to do this for real in 2006, given my quasi-judicial practice, and I'd like to keep my job. I'm also very active in the community. I am, for example, past president and currently a foundation chair for District 5300 in Rotary. I'm a member of Junior League of Las Vegas, Daughters of the American Revolution, and various other organizations. So I would appreciate your vote. And again, my name is Susan Johnson, Department 22.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Johnson. So Judge Johnson, you actually gave a good segue to my second question. So all of you have been in Nevada for a good period of time, especially before you were judges, and even now you've been involved in the Nevada community through different nonprofit organizations, legal organizations, or even serving the Nevada community on your own. So my next question is, please describe for our viewers what your involvement has been in the Nevada community. And we'll start out with Chief Justice Pickering.
Thank you again. I've been very active in the Nevada community as a whole, but also the legal community. I've served on the Nevada Board of Bar Examiners. I'm a member of the American Law Institute. I was adjunct faculty at UNLV Boyd School of Law for several years. I guest lecture there frequently, usually on either appellate practice or statutory interpretation. I have two true loves, I think, as far as community service. One is access to justice. After I was elected to the Supreme Court, I created the Nevada Appellate Pro Bono Program, which affords representation to litigants who are trying to navigate an appeal on their own without the benefit of counsel. And that program has been very successful in not only securing representation for people who wouldn't have had it otherwise, but also evening up the presentation to our court and improving the advocacy and published opinions that we get as a result of that program. We guarantee oral argument to lawyers who take a pro bono appeal, and that has proved to really spark a new interest from new segments of the bar who hadn't participated in that previously. I'm also co-chair of the Access to Justice Commission, and I think the work of that body is going to be more and more important as we navigate out of the COVID pandemic and people are facing litigation issues that weren't thought of before. That the number of people who are going to need legal representation is huge. My husband and I have the remnants of a small working ranch up in central Nevada near Belmont, which is really smack dab in the middle of the state. And in Belmont, it was once the county seat for Nye County in 1876 through 1905. And in Belmont is a magnificent old courthouse. And my husband and I put a 501c3 corporation together, got it qualified and set up. And then the board, we were fortunate enough to attract some wonderful, devoted people. And just this past year, we won the Preserve Nevada Award for the best charitable organization seeking to restore the Belmont Courthouse. It's the Friends of the Belmont Courthouse. And if you're ever in Central Nevada, you really should go see it. It's a magnificent building. So those are some of the community things I've been active in. And I've reached out and tried to monitor children in schools and in high school, college, and the law school, particularly mentoring young women in the law. When I came in, there were very few. I was the 5th female on the Nevada Supreme Court, and now we have a female majority. And so I've worked very hard to mentor people, whether through We the People competitions. I both judge it and coach and judge mock trials, moot courts, and take a very active role in that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Assemblyman Ozzie Fomo. Wait for him to be unmuted. Great.
Thank you very much. My wife and I raised 5 children here, 4 daughters and a boy. And when they were young, I was involved with a lot of their games. I was coached their soccer, and I'm looking forward to the grandchildren. We have 3 grandchildren now, looking forward to helping them with coaching sports and the activities that they do. In addition to that, my wife is big in mental health issues. And we've given a lot to the communities and with mental health. My youngest daughter is a nurse. She was just pinned in December and graduated from Nevada State College in May. And she took a first job as a nurse at Seven Hills Mental Health Hospital. And when I asked her why she did that instead of going into, say, the emergency room, she said, growing up with you and Mom, it was easy to choose mental health. And I wasn't sure if it was because of all the work we did with the mental health community or if my wife and I had disturbed her somehow. But I think it was the work we did. I'm hoping it was that. In addition to that, I'm involved mainly a lot with the homeless issues downtown. I've owned my own building in downtown for the last 24 years. And it's a huge community down here. It's a lot of need in this community. And my partner and I do a lot, especially in the summertime, to help them get off the streets if we can, or help them with just food and water where we can. In addition to that, I've spent many years mentoring new attorneys for the Criminal Justice Act panel in federal court. There was a panel that was created, and I've spent about the last 15 years mentoring young attorneys where they have to shadow another attorney and eventually do a mock trial in front of a district court judge, federal district court judge. And I've really enjoyed that, helping new attorneys come along. And in addition to that, my firm and I donate hundreds of hours of pro bono work every single year. And I think that's ultimately important because it's really what we're here to do. When I first started practicing, I was trying to get as much money as you could to pay off your school loans. And I remember older attorney David Abatangelo told me, it's not about the money, it's about everything you can buy with the money. And I realized as time went on, that wasn't as true. What it really is about is once you've reached that point in your career, it's about giving back. And so we in this firm take a lot of pride in helping people, whether they can afford us or not. We'll take a case pro bono and take it all the way through jury trial. And we've done everything from traffic tickets to murder cases at either a reduced fee or pro bono when we really believe in the issue and we really want to help the community. So those are the things I'm most proud of that we've done in our firm and me personally.
Very nice. Thank you. We're going to hand it to Judge Richard Scotti.
Thank you. I have been dedicated to the community in so many ways. I've really had an opportunity to show that I care about the community. I'm going to hope to do that and hope to continue that again if I'm reelected. When I first moved here, I served as an editor and a writer for the Las Vegas Review-Journal Ask a Lawyer column, providing common sense legal advice to the people. Then I also promoted and marketed the Clark County Bar Association Lawyers Pledge of Professionalism. I worked on numerous pro bono cases. My peers elected me as one of the governors of the State Bar Board of Governors. In that capacity, I tried to make sure that the lawyers were accountable and that justice was more accessible to everybody. The Nevada Supreme Court appointed me to serve for 10 years as one of the Supreme Court settlement judges, helping litigants resolve their cases before spending too much more money on a case. For 10 years, I also served as a state fee dispute coordinator, and in that capacity, I helped the community resolve disputes with their lawyers. I'm very proud of the opportunity to help serve school children, elementary school children. I've lectured at various schools on civics and the Constitution. I've participated in mock trials at the various classes. I've invited classes to come sit in my courtroom and observe the proceedings and then explain those proceedings to them. I've also worked with a nonprofit organization called Project Real, where I participated in mock trials in my courtroom. Another area where I'm extremely proud to have an opportunity to serve is being an occasional speaker for a group called NV Cure. NV Cure is an organization that helps educate and train ex-inmates once they are released. Further, I have served as a foreclosure mediator appointed by the Nevada Supreme Court, helping people keep their homes during the financial crisis. One of the most important things that a judge should do is to serve the community, and I hope I have an opportunity to continue to do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Scotti. Now we're going to hand it off to Judge Joe Hardy. Wait for you to be unmuted. Great.
Okay, thank you. As I said earlier, growing up here, my parents taught us to give back to our community, and prior to becoming a judge and continuing on as a judge, I tried my best to do that. So for example, I served in many various capacities with Boy Scouts of America, from Webelo's assistant to Webelo's leader, to Cub Master, to assistant Scoutmaster, to merit badge counselor. A few of the merit badges that I am approved as a counselor on are your law related. So like the law is one of them, community, citizenship in the community, citizenship in the nation. I've tried to give back by serving in various leadership capacities in my church as well. Prior to becoming a judge, I served on the Best Buddies of Nevada board for a couple of years. I served as an arbitrator for the Better Business Bureau, was appointed to serve on the Henderson City Charter Review Committee by then Mayor Andy Hafen. Served the state of Nevada on the Taxi Cab Authority Board for 3 years, I believe that was, prior to becoming a judge. As a judge, I look for opportunities to give back as well. One of my favorite things to do as a judge is to visit our schools and teach them about the judiciary and about what judges do. Depending on the age level or grade level, I like to do a little show and tell where I have a miniature Lego judge that I bring in. I bring in my gavel, my badge, and the kids really enjoy that. And hopefully they learn a little in that process as well. Another way I really enjoy giving back is being invited to serve as the swearing in officer of various community boards. So for example, earlier this year, I was privileged to do the swearing in ceremony, excuse me, do the swearing in ceremony for the Urban Chamber of Commerce. I've done that with various other organizations as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Judge Hardy. Now, Judge Eric Johnson.
All right, thank you. Most of my involvement in the community in a lot of ways sort of parallels Judge Hardy in that a lot of it has focused on our children. My wife and I have been significant supporters of Green Valley High School since I first started going there in 2002. We revamped the women's volleyball program there at the school to shift its focus toward the girls' athletic achievements and schooling and career plans, and to enhance it as a fundraising activity. We continued to participate with the school volleyball program after our daughters left. And over the course of years that we were there, through working with this program and various other supporters of school, we brought in over $100,000 in support of women's sports programs. We also were intimately involved with the school's random testing program for kids participating in extracurricular activities. Both Susan and I were very much honored by the school when we were inducted in its Wall of Fame for exemplifying the school's motto, commitment to excellence. We were the third parent group to be honored by the school in its 30-year history. I've worked over the last 10 years with Bobby and Sandy Ellis and their efforts to provide new shoes and toys to children in at-risk elementary schools at Christmas times. I'm one of the few people who have a Santa suit and have played Santa Claus for thousands of school kids at these at-risk schools. I've also been very active in our church, Green Valley United Methodist Church. I'm currently serving as the chairman of our staff parish committee, and I've served in the past as president of the church corporate entity responsible for the physical facilities of the church. Legally, I've worked with UNLV as an adjunct professor for about 8 years teaching ethics. I've also participated in Project Real program at the district court, bringing in school kids to do mock trials and learn about the law. And I've regularly participated as a judge swearing in graduates from the Hope for Prisoners program, which is a re-entry program for people who are coming out of our incarceration system. So again, community is an important part, and I've appreciated the opportunities I've had to serve it.
Thank you, Judge Johnson. And now we'll hand it to Mr. Jacob Reynolds.
Thank you so much, Milan. I would say my community involvement has been varied. Like Joe, I've also served in the Boy Scouts in varying different levels, but also I've served in my church a lot and different ministerial positions, leading young men, young women, or leading the adult men or the whole congregation at different times. I believe that's been an important part of getting to know people here in the Valley. I've got 4 young children, and all of them are involved in sports. I'm typically involved in coaching, either the assistant coach or the head coach in some degree. Some seasons I've been 3 different kinds of coaches in one season. It gets a little hectic. I've been serving on Nevada Succeeds Board for some time with Governor Bob Miller. That's an organization, 501c3, dedicated to the improvement of education in Nevada, and looks at real world data to see what kind of programs are truly helping children in their education goals and successes, and advocating for those, implementing those changes in our school system to provide real change. I've also been appointed multiple times to the Bond Oversight Committee. I currently chair that committee. The Bond Oversight Committee is what is in charge of we make recommendations to the School Board of Trustees for how the bond money is spent on our schools, repairing or creating new schools. And it's been a privilege for me to be on that committee for some time now. I used to be the J. Reuben Clark Law Society chair. J. Reuben Clark Law Society is a society dedicated to the ethical practice of law. I served in that position for a year and vice chair for another year. I work with the Alliance for Education and Liberty, which is a group that goes into the schools in central Las Vegas and the eastern side of Las Vegas to work with mainly 5th graders before they move into junior high, to educate them about the Constitution and the origins of the Constitution, which is something I've been published on and which I enjoy teaching about. I've also been, so those are kind of some of the varying things that I've been involved with in the community, and I've really appreciated the support that I've received from the community back in my race.
Perfect, thank you. And Judge Susan Johnson.
Am I muted?
Yep, you're good.
Oh, perfect. Well, I'm glad that my husband talked about a few things that we're involved in, so I feel like that 1.5 minutes expanded a little bit to 3 minutes. But in any event, I have been very active in the community from a charitable standpoint since I was a Rainbow Girl back in whenever I was a teenager. But I've engaged in various activities, and I've been a member of various organizations stemming from Junior League of Las Vegas. I am now a sustaining member. I was an active member back in the 90s and early in the late 80s. I am a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, an organization that is promoting history and also interest in our Constitution and patriotism. I also participated with my husband in helping Bobby and Sandy Ellis give away gifts to at-risk elementary school children. As an attorney and a judge, I have judged moot courts, such as the UNLV Rebels Trojan competition. I have been a member of the Civil Justice Reform Act Committee. I have been a president of the Howard D. McKibben chapter of the American Inns of Court, an organization which is designed to promote professionalism, ethics, and education among lawyers. I have also been a proponent of Hope for Prisoners. I have received the Chief Judge's Award for Excellence in 2013. I have served as civil presiding judge for the 8th Judicial District Court. I can't think of everything else. I also have talked on career days and things of that nature. I am still very active in the community, and I'm very proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge Johnson. So going on to question 3, what is your judicial philosophy and what's your framework when you evaluate a case as a judge? And we'll start out with Chief Justice Pickering.
And I'm unmuted.
Yes.
This is pretty straightforward for me. I believe that judges do not make law, they apply it. And so if you get a statute that you might not have written, were you in the legislature, the way that it's presented, you would have drawn the line somewhere else, or perhaps think a different policy argument should have been made and accepted. That doesn't matter. My personal view of how a policy call should be made should not enter into my judicial evaluation of the legal rights that are applied to people who come before the court. Each person who comes before the court is entitled to his or her case evaluated by the same legal standards, and the source of those legal standards is the Constitution, statutes, and prior case law. There are instances where you overturn prior case law. Those are rare, but I work very, very hard to make sure I am treating people the same way who come before the appellate courts with a similar set of facts and legal issues, that person A is treated the same way as person B. And I think that's what the respect for the legal system is all about. So for me, I work very hard to apply the law faithfully to what it says and how it's written. So that's my judicial philosophy.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Assemblyman Ozzie Fomo. For you to be unmuted.
Thank you very much. I too believe in following the law and strictly construing what we have, but I do also see the Constitution, the United States Constitution, the Nevada Constitution, as a living and breathing document. You know, when the Founding Fathers drafted the Constitution, Black people were considered 3/5 of the person. Women didn't have the right to vote. And we as a nation have evolved. And as we evolved, the law needs to evolve with it. And so I do see it as a living and breathing document. I'm not there for judicial activism. I will follow the law, but as circumstances change and as we evolve, the law will change as well.
Very good. Thank you. And then we have Judge Richard Scotti. Unmute you.
Great. Well, hello. So my judicial philosophy when applying either the Constitution of the United States or the Constitution of Nevada is one known as originalism. With originalism, a judge must apply the original meaning of the Constitution. This means that the judge must not substitute his or her own political opinions, agenda, or views for those of the drafters. I wrote down here that Supreme Court Justice Scalia described originalism by saying, it doesn't mean that you blindly and strictly apply the words of the Constitution. And you don't construe the words leniently to accomplish your own views. But it does mean that the words as written must be interpreted reasonably, giving a fair view of the words. That's my judicial philosophy. I believe that same approach applies when I'm interpreting Nevada laws. I don't substitute my own interpretation or view for what a Nevada law should be. I leave that up to the Nevada legislature, and then I apply it. If a law needs to be revised, I leave that up to the legislative branch, which is more capable of hearing all points of views, doing the research, and coming up with the law that best suits society at the present time.
Thank you, Judge Scotti. Judge Joe Hardy, unmute you.
Thank you. So my judicial philosophy, when I saw that question, I thought immediately that I believe in due process, and due process means notice and an opportunity to be heard. So what's notice? Whether you're in a criminal arena, which is where people generally think of due process, but it also applies in the civil arena. So notice, what charges am I facing as an accused person? Or in a civil case, what are the claims that are being filed against me? Opportunity to be heard. So do I have a voice? Am I able to respond to that? And so as a judge, it's my duty as a judge to ensure due process for everyone, and that's to give everyone fair notice, adequate notice of what they're facing, and an opportunity to be heard. The other phrase that came to my mind upon looking at that question was justice delayed is justice denied. As I said earlier, in Clark County, we have tremendous caseloads as judges. And so part of our duty as judges is to resolve matters in a timely, efficient, and fair manner. Because if people's cases are languishing, whether they're, in custody as an accused person, whether they're out of custody, or whether they're a business or an individual who's suing or being sued, delay is really denying justice to those people. So as a judge, I strive to be fair and efficient, give everybody an opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Judge Hardy. Next, we have Judge Eric Johnson.
Okay, thank you. Well, as a district court judge, I primarily hear civil and criminal matters. In my view, the responsibility of the judge is to apply the law fairly and evenly to all the parties and move cases expeditiously through the system. The public demands and expects expeditious handling of cases, and that's the only fair thing to do with litigants. And so the key thing that I have to do is consider the legitimate interests, the goals, and motives to the extent the law allows, and whenever possible, assist in bringing the parties together to reach a resolution of a matter. In interpreting statutes and the Constitution, I guess you would say I sort of view myself as a constructivist. My philosophy is essentially that the basic interpretive principle for the Nevada Constitution and Nevada statutes is for them to be construed in the ordinary sense, unless there's some apparent absurdity or some unmistakable error in the construction. Consequently, where the language in the Nevada Constitution or in a Nevada statute is plain and not ambiguous, I believe it should be read in those plain and ambiguous terms. This interpretation requires me to presume that the voters, in creating and amending the state constitution and the legislature in enacting the statute, say what they mean. And so when I look at the law, I try to focus on what the law says, and not to interpret it in some way, as some other judges have mentioned, to avoid interpreting in any way that brings our own policy goals and thoughts into the process. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Johnson. And then next we have Mr. Jacob Reynolds.
Thank you. My judicial philosophy has already been stated by others, as I am an originalist, a textualist. Other people call it strict constructionism, but I believe the Constitution says what it says, and I believe the genius of the Constitution is that, so Mr. Fumo talked about this, Assemblyman Fumo talked about the wrongs that were written into the Constitution originally, and that, those are able to be changed, and they were changed. And I think some of the worst decisions we have from our courts follow when the courts try to move the Constitution where it isn't already. And if you look at the history of some of the more problematic decisions we have in our history, come from judges doing that instead of enforcing the law as it's written, instead of creating doctrines that don't have a real basis in the law. And so I'm in favor of looking at the original intent and looking at the text and seeing what those say.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. And then we have Judge Susan Johnson.
I have to say that I almost am going to parrot what several of my colleagues have just said, but we need to remember the third branch of government. Our job is to apply and interpret the law. It is not to make the law. And I happen to be on the strict constructionist side. I construe the words as they are written, but I am mindful that there are times where I am faced with two lawyers who have two reasonable interpretations of the particular statute. And in that case, I have to consider the legislative intent, and that goes back through looking at the history. And then I need to harmonize what both of them, both the lawyers have said, to come up with what I think is a reasonable interpretation of the law. But I am one that you've got to construe the words as written. They are there. The legislators have thought about this. Every word has a meaning, and you can't just take one part of the phrase without considering the other, because you can't make part of the statute meaningless. So I construe all of them. I consider all of the law whenever I'm applying it to whatever the issue is that comes before me.
Thank you, Judge Johnson. So we'll be moving on to our fourth question. In your opinion, what are the qualities of a good judge? And we'll start with Chief Justice Pickering.
I think they're straightforward, particularly in the appellate realm. We read briefs and look at trial transcripts and listen to oral arguments, and it's a very distilled process. One side's won and one side lost, and they're appealing to us to review what happened in district court. And what makes a good appellate judge is one who is willing to put in the time that it takes to read and study what the lawyers have to say and truly grasp their arguments, and then look at the law that each has cited and teed up and evaluate where that law sits relative to their case. And I think that comes of experience both in trial court and as an appellate lawyer before I went on the bench. But the core thing is to make sure you're not indulging in individual bias, that each person is truly getting to be heard fairly on their side and their points that they wish to make, and understand their side and understand the opposing side and come to a decision on it. It sounds so straightforward and so simple. It isn't particularly racy, but it's the core of what we do as appellate judges, and that is to try to get through the advocacy to the core of the dispute and make sure that we're applying the law the same way in each case for similarly situated parties. And if it looks as if we're not, that there's a good reason in the law for that, and we explain it and make it clear to the people why one side won and one side lost in our court. And I think that's a very exacting, demanding process, and it takes hard work. But that's what makes a good judge, I think, at the appellate level.
Assemblyman Ozzie Fomo. Sorry.
Thank you very much. If I was to boil it down to one word, I would say to listen impartially, to listen fairly, listen to both parties. But to apply the law fairly would be another quality. Equity and fairness under the law is one of my campaign slogans. Is what I want to do when I'm up there. But I think also a Supreme Court justice, an appellate court justice needs experience. And that's what I have. I bring to the table here. I've done family, I've done criminal, I've done civil, I've appeared before county commissions and city boards. I have the experience in the legislature. I can discuss legislative intent and to be able to apply it. Also, as an adjunct professor at the law school, I have those qualities up there that the other candidates in my race don't have. But those are the qualities I see as a good quality of a judge.
Thank you. Judge Richard Scotti. You're good.
I think I'm, okay, very good. So first and foremost, a good judge must have integrity and must be humble. A good judge must recognize that he or she is a public servant, responsible for carefully and diligently making decisions. A judge should be willing to work long, very long and hard hours to get it right, to ensure that there's due process all along the way. In any case, there has to be due process from the charging of crimes through pretrial hearings, from trial and sentencing. And a judge has a duty to make sure that there is consistency and fairness in all that he does. A good judge should be able to walk into the Justice Court building every day and say, today I'm going to listen as hard as I can. I'm going to have the courage to make the right decisions. I'm going to be as fair as I can. I am going to muster deep inside the wisdom that I need to make the right decisions. You need to make decisions without regard to sex, culture, national origin, rich or poor, lawyer or no lawyer, the size of the case, political pressures, private motives, personal gain. All of those have to be turned away, and a good judge has the courage to do that.
Thank you, Judge Scotti. Judge Joe Hardy Jr.
Thank you. So what came to my mind after hearing my colleagues answer that question was the phrase, great minds think alike. So I literally, in my notes on this question, have basically everything everybody else already said. I have listen, be fair, be impartial, be hardworking, be courageous, have integrity. So I guess in sum, I would say ditto to everything everybody else said.
Thank you, Judge Hardy. We have Judge Eric Johnson.
I've always said when I ask this question, because I've had it asked me a number of times, there's three things that I think are really important for a good judge. And the first is to have good judgment, to be able to apply the law to reach proper and fair resolution for all the parties in a controversy. The second thing, I think it's important for a judge to have a deep personal understanding of how the justice system can impact a person and how injustice can cause real pain to those who participate in the system. And third, I think a judge has to be decisive. Legal cases, as I've said before, have to be resolved. And in doing that, decisions have to be made. And the judge is the one who has to make those decisions. The parties deserve that, and the public, which ultimately finances and relies on our justice system, expects that. So those are the qualities I think that are key to a good judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob Reynolds.
Thank you. I believe that the primary quality I would look for in a good judge is the intelligence to get the decision right. It's frustrating when you don't feel like your argument is understood. I think a lot of attorneys are fine when they lose an argument, but if they don't feel the judge understood their argument, it can be very frustrating on that front. But I think it's important to have somebody who's intelligent. The next is humility. Judges need to know how far they should go and when they've made mistakes. When I clerked, one of my favorite, so I worked for Judge Hunt, so he's one of my favorite judges, obviously, but he, I remember one case in particular, he came in and he said, I don't think I can do that as a judge, or I should do that. And it was just that judicial humility to pull back and, you know, let other players in the system do what they were supposed to do. But also when you recognize when you're wrong, if you made a mistake and someone can point out that mistake to you, to have the humility to change it. And that's something I've learned. The last is experience. And one thing I love about being on this panel is I've had experience with everybody on this panel. And I'm frankly, ecstatic to be associated with everybody on this panel. So it's a good list of endorsements that ICAN has made, and but that experience, you can tell when someone is a good attorney. People know who the good attorneys are, and there are great attorneys here present. The last thing I'd say is personal integrity. It is critical, especially as a judge, to have that impartiality. One of the things I mention a lot in my campaign is I've got substantial bipartisan support. I've got former U.S. senators, former governors in Nevada from both sides of the aisle, former Congress people, current city council people from both sides of the aisle supporting my campaign. And that's important, to have personal integrity where people, no matter what their political beliefs are, can say, hey, this person is going to make a fair decision, and I trust this person to be able to stand up to the social pressures that are out there. So those are the 4 points I would make.
Perfect. Thank you, Jacob. And then last, we have Judge Susan Johnson.
Well, I would have to say that you first have to understand that folks are coming to the judge to decide their very important issues. And it is important for us to give them an opportunity to be heard. And one of the things that we do in giving them their opportunity to be heard, we need to be prepared. We need to read their briefs. We need to listen. We need to be prepared and, of course, decisive. And in doing so, we need to apply the law. We need to be professional. We need to treat the parties with respect and be patient with them. So I think that those are all good qualities. And also, we need to have control of our courtroom. And that does not necessarily mean that we need to be mean and nasty. It means that we need to keep control to earn the respect of the parties.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Johnson. So our fifth question is, we all have strengths and weaknesses. So individually, what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? And we'll start with Chief Justice Pickering.
Okay, I'll be quick about this because I think we've all overshot our minute and a half on our answers so far. My greatest strength is that I'm curious and I want to understand both sides before I reach a decision. I work hard and truly want to understand, and that's the guiding force for me. I'm blessed with a very solid educational background, and that's been a gift to me in working on the court and as a lawyer before I joined the court. My weakness, my principal weakness is I overcommit, and I have to remind myself that perfection is the enemy of good. Sometimes you've got to just go ahead and commit, and that's the dismiss that all the other judges are talking about. Sometimes it's not clear and you just have to call it, and you're not in the answer any other way than writing it out and letting the parties know you heard them, and one side won and one side lost, and why. So those would be my answers.
Thank you, Chief Justice. We'll go to Assemblyman Fomo.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief as well. I think my greatest strength is my ability to outwork my opponents. I will stay here 24/7 if I have to. When I walk in for a trial, nobody in that courtroom knows the file, nobody knows the facts, nobody knows the law better than me. I've outworked every single person in there, and I think that's the greatest strength I have when I go in there. I think also my greatest weakness is probably too passionate in representing my clients. I think Judge Eric Johnson has a little piece of paper in his courtroom that says, Thomas Jefferson said, if you get too angry, count to 10, and if you're still angry after that, count to 100. And I think he placed it there after a trial I had in his courtroom, because I do get passionate when I'm defending my clients. So I'd say that's probably the greatest weakness.
Perfect. Thank you. Judge Richard Scotti.
Yes, can you hear me? Great. My greatest strength, I believe, is allowing the attorneys and the parties as much time as they need to be heard and present their arguments, and having patience with them to give them as much time. And I've heard from some on law blogs that when attorneys are waiting in the gallery, waiting to come forward, they get frustrated because they have to wait too long. But when they get called, I give them the same amount of time as well. I let them be able to say their mind. Everyone gets time. And here's why. I had a gentleman, a pro per, come in my courtroom one time. He was representing himself, appealing a matter from justice court. I let him speak as long as he wanted. I wanted to make sure I understood the nuances of his position. I was engaging. I asked him questions. I let him ask me some questions. And when he walked away, he lost. When he walked away, he turned around and said, "Judge, I think you really made the wrong decision here. But you're the first person to actually listen to me and care about me." I realized then everyone coming into court expects the judge to actually care about their case. And justice can't be rushed. No matter how big your case is, who you are, your financial condition. So let's turn to my greatest weakness. I actually think that's the same exact thing, because attorneys are complaining that I give everyone too much time. I don't think that reflects lack of control over the courtroom. I think it reflects that I'm a public servant. It's my job to sit there and listen to everybody and make sure I can come up with the absolute best decision. So like I said, justice cannot be rushed. And if attorneys think otherwise, I don't agree with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Scotti. Thank you, Judge Scotti. Now we'll hand it to Judge Joe Hardy, Jr.
Thank you. So in this question, I viewed my greatest strength as the view of service. So I believe that I, as a judge, am there to serve both the public, our community, the attorneys, the parties, victims in criminal cases. So I do everything through that lens, if you will, of I am there as the judge to serve. And I tell my staff that as well, because one of the important things that members of the general public may not understand or comprehend is that judicial staff, the importance of everyone who works with us as judges. We have support teams, if you will. And so I'm always telling my team that we're there to serve and to listen and to hear, when they're taking phone calls or responding to emails. We're here to serve the public, like I said, and that includes attorneys, parties, litigants, victims, everyone. So that's, I believe, my greatest strength. A weakness of mine that I've candidly been dealing with all my life is I am a soft talker. I'm not super loud. I talk slowly. So a slow and soft talker. When I got comments from the Review Journal poll, we got pros and cons comments from attorneys, and there were a number on there that said they couldn't hear me. So I'm working on that to speak louder and make sure that everyone can hear me.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Joe Hardy. And I can tell you that we can all hear you very well on today's town hall. So thank you. Next, we have Judge Eric Johnson.
I think of my strengths. One is that I do have a deep personal understanding of how the justice system can impact upon a person and how injustice can cause real pain, not only to those who are parties to a controversy, but also to their family and friends. Consequently, I feel I am sensitive that being a judge is not simply being a computer where certain data is dumped in and results come out. Our cases affect real people with real concerns, and those need to be appreciated. And I do feel I have an appreciation of those concerns. I also think a strength that I have is decisiveness. I feel that I can make decisions that need to be made when they need to be made. I've often said that one of my best maturing experiences I ever had was one summer when I was an umpire for Little League baseball and softball. I learned to make decisions quickly and decisively, and sometimes they were wrong, but they were the best I could do at the time. And in doing that job, I quickly learned that you can't make decisions and make everybody happy all the time. and I learned I could take a lot of abuse and still make decisions. If I had to think of a weakness, the one thing I always say is I would like to be able to do better is to read faster. We have lots of briefs and documents that come in, and I wish I could read a little bit faster. So if I had to pick one thing I'd like to improve on, it would be my speed reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Johnson. Next, we have Mr. Jacob Reynolds.
Yeah, I'm going to take a lead from both of those running for Supreme Court on this one. From Justice Pickering, I'm going to be short, and from candidate Fumo, that same thing. I work hard and I make sure when I go into court that nobody's more prepared than me. And I know the file, I know what we're going to say, I know what we're going to do. I work hard in our line of practice. I work with Mark Hutchison, and he says, his motto is, sometimes it takes 24 hours in a day to get the job done. So we work on that motto. As for a weakness, I'm not currently a judge. There's going to be a learning curve when I become a judge. So that's a personal weakness. Gratefully, it's a weakness that all the candidates in my department share, because none of them have been judges either. But that I expect there to be a learning curve. Gratefully, I've served with a judge as a clerk for 2 years already, and I'm very familiar with what should be happening. But I look forward to that experience and know that I'm capable of accomplishing and being a successful judge.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. And then we have Judge Susan Johnson.
Well, I'd have to say that my strengths are I am prepared, I am hardworking, I do read the briefs. In fact, I might note that there's been times when I've read the briefs and the attorneys know that. They've given me their argument and I have to correct them because I'll have to say, well, on page 3 you said this. And they look at me strange like, oh my goodness, you did actually read the paperwork. I am very efficient in moving my cases, and I do hold the lawyers to task to move their cases along. My weakness is that sometimes I become impatient with those lawyers who are not prepared and who are basically dragging their feet when there's no cause to. There's just lawyers who just, well, they're not as hardworking and even to the point of even being lazy. So I do get a little impatient with those.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Johnson. Before we go to our last question, I want to inform you that on Facebook Live, we've had 474 views by now. So thank you all. Thanks to ICAN and your campaigns for circulating the video. We will also circulate the recording of this to the Las Vegas and Israeli-American communities. So we hope to make sure that everyone hears, your viewpoints, your positions, and make a good informed decision when they vote. So the last question, and this should be a quick one, who is your role model and why? And we'll start with Chief Justice Pickering.
Yes, just picking one, it would be Robert Jackson, former justice on the United States Supreme Court. And the reasons are many. First of all, I think he is the finest legal writer that the courts have ever seen. And all you need to do is read his dissent in the Oramatsu case, and it comes alive. And he had a freshness of vision and voice that very few justices have mastered as well as he did. Secondly, he applied the law, but he saw it. You always have the sense when you read it that he thought about it freshly, even though he was faithful to the source of it. He thought about it freshly, and he applied his own analysis to how that law set on the facts that he was looking at. And that's a gift and a tribute, though, also to his hard work. And then third, he had an exemplary career as a lawyer, which I won't go through with everyone here, but you can look him up, and he's an extraordinary, extraordinary jurist. So that, if I have to just pick one, would be him.
Thank you. Assemblyman Ozzie Fomo.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and to all your viewers out there. I'm going to pick two. They're probably not as well known, but my partner, Tom Pitaro, and another attorney here in Las Vegas, Bill Terry. I've been fortunate enough to be friends with them for the last 15 years. probably more. I've had every meal for the last 15 years with Tom Pitaro, breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner, and I've learned so much from him. He's a bulldog, he's a fighter, he's intelligent, he cares about what he does, and I would say the same for Bill Terry. He's just a gentleman in the courtroom, knows the courtroom, knows the law better than anybody, and it's just been an honor to know and work with those two individuals. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Assemblyman Fumo. Judge Richard Scotti.
Yes, I picked Supreme Court Justice Michael Cherry. He had graciously agreed to be the Supreme Court Justice to swear me in when I first became a judge. I'm honored that he did that. I served with him many years ago on the Client Security Fund Committee, and there we helped people who had been harmed or abandoned by their attorneys. I did that with him for several years. My reason for picking him is he's always dedicated to utmost due process. He served the community with zeal, including the weakest members of society. He's always been a strong advocate of fair criminal justice reform. He's protected the rights of the indigent. He very strongly pushed for the appellate court here in Nevada, as did Justice Pickering, and that program has been highly successful. And he also promoted the Nevada Sentencing Commission, which has sought to reduce sentence inconsistencies. So I strongly pick Supreme Court Justice Michael Cherry.
Thank you, Judge Scotti. And because we are the Israeli-American Civic Action Network, wanted to put out that Chief Justice Cherry is very pro-Israel. He was honored by the Las Vegas Friends of the Israel Defense Forces, FIDF, pretty recently. So wanted to put that out there as ICAN leadership. Okay, next we have Judge Joe Hardy.
Thank you. So my judicial role model is the judge for whom I externed while I was in law school, and that's Judge Lloyd D. George here in Federal District Court here in Nevada. But for my externship with him, I would not be a judge right now. It was a summer that I'll never forget. Just his patience, his kindness, his intelligence, his hard working was just a blessing to watch him in court. And it was doing that, working with him and his law clerks that planted the seed in me to one day become a judge. I always tell people, if you haven't heard about him, you should look him up. And of note, I don't think there are many people in the world who can say that they work at the building that's named after them. So Judge George, working judge, and the Las Vegas Federal District Court building was named after him, and he still works there, and just a wonderful gentleman, a wonderful judge, and so he's my role model and is why I'm here today.
Thank you, Judge Hardy. Next, we have Judge Eric Johnson.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to parrot to some degree Joe Hardy and say that my two role models are Judge Lloyd George and Judge Howard McKibben, both federal district court judges here in Nevada, and both who came onto the bench about the same time that I came out to Nevada. I was a prosecutor here in Nevada with the federal government for about 32 years, and I did numerous trials and had other cases in litigation in front of both men. And their way that they handled their courtroom, handled the litigants with respect, knew the cases, knew the law, knew evidence, and sought to be fair to all sides. And most of all, constantly would listen to the attorneys and reevaluate their own thoughts. Both men were willing to say that they were wrong and sometimes make complete changes in their decisions based upon the review of the law. And I really admired that, and I tried to mold my handling of the courtroom after their work. So that would be my role models in terms of moving forward with my judicial role.
Thank you, Judge Johnson. Now, Mr. Jacob Reynolds.
Well, thank you. I would, my favorite, I would go after is Judge Roger L. Hunt. He was the chief judge, and I clerked for him for 2 years, and that's the majority of my experience. I also externed for Judge George and had that experience, and actually with Judge David Sam in Salt Lake. I feel like Judge Hunt taught me, he was a great litigator before he became a judge. And it was just the most amazing experience to be able to go back in chambers with him after listening to arguments of counsel, and then to listen to him deconstruct what they said and what he found was persuasive. And it's affected my career and put me in a great position in my career to succeed. He had patience, had great demeanor. He got along with everybody in the court and was able to serve on, it was a man of integrity, and was able to serve on some pretty influential committees in the Ninth Circuit because of that, which we got to help him with. So embodied the things I feel are essential to be a great judge, and I really enjoyed working with him.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. And then Judge Susan Johnson.
You know, I was listening to all of my colleagues, and I thought about Justice Robert Jackson, who was actually the last justice of the Supreme Court who didn't go to law school, what he must have been going through. By the way, a great read would be The Five Scorpions, which is a book about the 5 Supreme Court justices which were appointed by FDR. But I would have to say that the 2 that I've had would be my role models, would be Judge George and Judge McKibben. In fact, I could just be a little bit annoyed with my husband for naming them, but I had a different experience with both of these gentlemen. Judge George did swear me in as a judge. Judge McKibben, he was just a fabulous judge to try a case in front of, as was Judge George. And he was also had the Inns of Court named after him. Probably because of his professionalism, ethics, and so forth. So I would have to say them. Another role model of mine is Chief Justice Bill Maupin. He was the one to take me aside when I first became elected as judge and said, do not be upset if you're ever reversed, because you're probably not wrong. Sometimes the Supreme Court needs to do so because of public policies or other reasons. So I would have to say that those are my role models.
Thank you, Judge Johnson. And I would like to thank you all for being here tonight. We had a very informative and enlightening session, and you've really given a good understanding to our voters on what you stand for, who you are as people, and hopefully they'll make an informed decision in the primary and upcoming general election. I know we kept you a little late, so again, thank you very much for all your time, and best of luck with your respective elections.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.